Because a paleo diet, if you were truly being paleo, you would only eat exactly one thing for your entire life until your teeth rot out and fall out of your head.
Yeah, at age 26.
At age 26.
Which is when you're an elder in the village.
Butterscotch.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 104 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, and I'm not the games programmer.
I'm Sam, and I'm also not the games programmer.
And today is June 27, 2017. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on the show. There's going to be swears. That's it. That's all. That's the whole thing.
Yep.
So if you don't...
I have a question.
Yeah.
I mean, unrelated to the swearing thing, but related to the programmer thing. Just the origin of the word programmer. Because it sounds like political stance being all about grammar. But definitely that's not what it is.
Well,
yeah, it's also not spelled the right way because that would be another A in there.
But
it's actually grammar.
But if you think about it, you know, because there's a lot of words that get sort of mutilated over time.
Can I not think about it, though?
But if you do think about it,
all right, I'll try.
Grammar, which is just rules of syntax, right?
Grammar.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's
kind of like
that is what a programming language is.
But then how come a programmer, they change it to an ER instead of an
because it's
AR?
It's because it's one who writes, you know, like when you go to a play.
One who is 4 grams?
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Oh, yeah. The program at a play was also made by a programmer.
Yeah, that was originally what a programmer did.
Right.
And then as computers came up, people stopped going to plays and they were all like, what the fuck am I going to do now? I got nothing to write. So
but it was
they all started
specifically, right. It was specifically the programmers that were doing the play stuff.
Right.
Who moved, like their whole industry moved into programming.
It's kind of like how coal is now shifting into solar.
Right.
So basically all the programmers from Broadway, they all switched into computer science.
To be fair, though, it's very dangerous for those solar miners.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very bright.
Very bright.
Down there.
You get to be standing on the sun.
Yeah. Really dangerous.
It's hard.
Yeah, sure. I mean, people are always talking about how dangerous coal mining is. And they're like, let's just move to solar. It's safe and clean.
Crazy
But not for the sun miners.
No.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's madness.
Standing on the sun.
You know?
It's not safer than being in a...
Plus, you know, carrying around
Whatever.
like a wheelbarrow of sunlight, you know, to get it into the sun
heavy.
truck. It's heavy as fuck.
You got to wear really good sunglasses.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
You probably get a lot of sunburns.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. All right. Well, you guys want to get to some news?
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, also before we get started, this podcast is brought to you by advertisements. Advertisements for when you want to tell people to buy things.
That's pretty good.
We're gonna insert some real ones in that slot, right? I assume.
No, we're not really sponsored by anything. All right.
Well, we are.
news.
No, we are. That's not true. This episode is actually sponsored by Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Yeah, but you already knew that.
We make games.
Go buy them.
Go buy them.
All right. First news item. We got our Wrangler back.
Yeah.
Monique has been gone for quite a while because she made a person.
Yeah.
Apparently, it takes some time to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, shocker. Crafting a whole human being, rather labor-intensive process. We have Mo made a baby.
Yeah. I think in the past, for privacy reasons, we just said she was away for medical
She's busy.
things.
No, we just said she was away because if we said medical things, that would also be too.
Oh, that's true. Well, now you know.
But she said, it's cool, we tell you.
Yeah.
She made it. She made a person.
So congrats to Baby Scotch as
The first
Monique
Baby
refers to it.
Scotch.
We were talking about getting some Baby Scotch onesies whipped up for our merch store whenever we get that off.
It is a weird problem with because that's the one merchandise item that has a real shelf life problem, you know, because if there's somebody who wants a onesie right now, but we don't provide it for 2 months, it's
The
too
baby's
late.
4 times the
The
size
baby's
it was.
100 times bigger.
That's true. Unless we just provide an endless series
scale.
of
So here's
of
what you do.
scaling
Yeah, all the way up
onesies.
to adult.
You get a baby onesie that has a bunch of buttons on it. So the strap and then really long straps that attach. So you can just keep on.
So you can pull yourself
I
up
see,
by your
yeah.
onesie straps.
Right.
Yeah. Like a real
When you
baby.
say when you say a baby onesie, is this a onesie that is a baby of another onesie?
Yeah. I mean, technically, yes.
I mean, how do you think onesies are made?
I mean, I assumed that they were born.
You have to take baby onesies from their mothers out
from
in
the
the wild.
nest,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the onesie
You have
nest.
to go catch them.
Yeah. They're very slippery.
They are, and some of them don't really breed well in captivity, so you gotta get like the really good docile ones.
Yeah.
So
That's where
It can be
the
challenging.
softest onesies come from the wild.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we want to talk about Introversion Software.
Yeah.
They're a company.
do we?
Yeah.
So
Cool.
So we aren't in the business of talking trash. We're just going to talk facts.
Yeah.
So here's what happened.
Yeah, there's an interesting article in games industry, which for those of you who don't read it but are interested in games and game dev industry stuff, it's a great sort of one-stop shop for what's happening in the industry, what people think about what's happening.
So what's happening?
So Introversion launched a game, and these are guys who made Prison Architect as well as Darwinia.
Oh, that's right. They also did do Darwinia. I played the shit out of that game.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. And their most recent game, Prison Architect, is this simulation game where you build a prison, and it's absolutely hysterical because they built in all this fun AI behaviors where they interact and people, there'll be riots and all sorts of goofy stuff with people getting shanked in the cafeteria.
Mm-hmm. Just fun for
the whole family.
Yeah.
So that game went gangbusters. I think they sold, how many units did they say?
I don't know how many units, but I think they made like 25 million in revenue or something off of it.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
Healthy.
And then they worked up a game, which I'm not sure. Do one of you play it? I'm not sure what it is. I looked at it, but I was like, I don't know what this is.
It's
called Scanner Sombre.
Mm-hmm.
Sombra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's some sort of pinpoint of light-based exploration experience.
Okay.
So if that doesn't make any sense to you, doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. So on the trailer, what I saw was basically you are the world is completely static. Nothing is moving, and everything is made of these sort of pinpricks of light, and you have this scanning device in your hand, and when you hold the button, it shoots out these little beams, and then parts of the world become visible.
Okay.
And the trailer just showed a lot of that for like a couple minutes of just kind of like the player walking around in these static scenes, pointing the scanner at things, and then having them become visible.
Okay.
I think that's the
all right. That's it. So
and it does have a VR component they added later.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason this is interesting is because there's an article on Games Industry about the flop of this new game of theirs. And the reason I think it was interesting to talk about is because we talked in depth last week about not necessarily feeling beholden to your fan base in terms of what you make next.
Yeah.
And then I think this is a good example of looking at an example of someone who clearly did not feel beholden to their fan base in terms of what to make next, who then bombed a ton. So this game sold, I think, 6,000 copies total in its launch month.
And it is a relative bombing, right? So relative to the $25 million, because they probably made, I think they even said $50,000 something off of this thing. So if you're, if you're a small, 1 or 2 person studio and you kick a game like this out in half a year, right? That's something you can live off of that just fine if that's kind of your model. But if you're a company like Introversion, who's had some history of success, they have this really successful $25 million game, and then you go spit out a $50,000 game. That definitely is not going to cover any of your studio costs, and
it's not going to feel good.
Yeah,
either.
So it's a relative bomb in the.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about it is from the article, it was clear that they thought they could marshal their fan base from Prison Architect to go kind of like what we talk about with collecting a fan base and rolling them forward onto new games, that they could do this with the Prison Architect success and sort of roll it forward. And the game just imploded, basically. Didn't really do much of anything compared to everything else they've done. And the reason I want to talk about it is because to me it's a really interesting sort of disconnect between, like, again, the whole idea of not being beholden to your fan base is so that you can make new and interesting things, but ideally also that they would still be interested in, right?
That people would
be interested in, right? That are generally marketable.
But even not only that, it's also understanding that if you don't act in a way that is beholden to your player base, you have no right to expect your player base to follow you. Right.
Yep.
And just the idea that you could basically convert one successful game into the success of another game that is in no way, like not even on the radar of familiar territory. Right. Doesn't make any sense. And to then blame sort of like the broader industry as the reason for that failure, which is what they did.
Yeah, the takeaway in the article was that it was yet another sign of this indie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about. And we've statistically debunked also by scraping Steam Spy data and using Adam's powerful statistics brain to figure things out. So it was just kind of frustrating to read, because I think if you're not versed in what's actually happening in the industry, or if you think that this makes sense for them to expect, then you could easily read that, like, oh wow, things are really bad.
Did they have a publisher for Scanner Sombre?
No, I don't think so.
Because they did for Prison Architect.
Oh, did they?
I believe. Maybe not.
But, I don't know. But even still, that wouldn't be. I mean, the problem is that they made a game that just nobody wants.
Yeah,
right?
but I think there's another.
And they assumed that there was a basement for Steam sales, and because that was the argument they made, is basically they were like, well, we didn't think that you could sell that few copies, But they basically made a game nobody wanted, and then sort of blamed the ecosystem for the fact that.
Right. Well, I think the other interesting thing was they mentioned that in the revenue charts on Steam, they were number 15 in like top selling games for that week or two or whatever. And they pointed again to this as being like, wow, oh my God, if we only 15. If we only sold 6,000 copies, like what does that mean for everybody else on this list? But the reality is it doesn't mean anything, because from what we've seen for all these lists, it's not like a linear increase.
It's a power
geometric increase. So it might be that the difference between position number 15 and number 10 is like a 10x difference
or more.
Because we know that the number one items that get on there and that stay up there sell millions of dollars worth of games.
Yeah.
And then they just announced that PlayerUnknown's Battleground, which is this sort of battle royale style shooter made by a modder, reached $100 million in revenue.
Jeez.
Sold 4 million copies.
What? It's in early access.
It's on Steam. And you see this difference where it's like, well, that is a compelling game concept that's executed well enough.
Yeah. So you got one person going, I guess the whole industry is collapsing because our game only sold 6,000
And then
copies.
you have a modder who came in and made a thing.
Yep.
It just made 100 mil off it.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it was an interesting thing that I think, I hope it's just possible either from people listening to the podcast or just from us taking the time to, look outside of our own studio to realistically blame ourselves for stuff whenever we need to.
Yeah. Whenever you find yourself blaming the industry for a market failure that you have created, you're wrong. You're just wrong.
You just missed something.
You missed something. That was your failure, not the market failure.
Because there are people succeeding in the market. Otherwise, there may not be one.
There definitely wouldn't be one. Yeah. Yeah, if there was nothing to be accomplished there, then nobody would be in that space.
Yeah, and I think another interesting point about their marketing angle was, so two things that I noticed was the trailer to me didn't really convey what I would consider to be gameplay, just kind of in general. Because I couldn't tell what they were doing. It reminded me of the early No Man's Sky trailers where they were just kind of like walking around and looking at things.
Right. Everyone's like, but what
do you do? Right? And so it was kind of the same thing where they're walking around in this place and I just like see things completely unmoving, completely static. And they're just pointing this little like laser light at things, but I can't even tell what that thing is doing. And so I didn't get a sense of actually having a good game experience, but also they kicked off the trailer with from the makers of Prison Architect. And then in their Steam short description, it also says something about Prison Architect.
Interesting. Okay, right? so they thought the credibility was going to be
So the idea there was instead of pitching this game on its own merits, the marketing materials around this game keep pointing at Prison Architect, right? As a reason to buy this game,
right? Yeah. And it's just so different that it doesn't matter.
It reminds me of, you guys ever hear of Tabula Rasa?
Yeah.
So it was a third-person shooter MMO that came out, and it was Richard Garriott's Tabula Rasa, right? Because people thought, oh yeah, you slap Richard Garriott's name on a thing, boom.
Can you remind me who is that?
Ultima?
Do you remember?
No.
Ultima, yeah.
Is that right?
Maybe.
Ultima?
Maybe.
Anyway, famous guy, famous name.
Famous game
right?
guy.
Not famous enough.
Like a Tom Clancy Splinter Cell kind of a situation, right?
Got it.
So,
but less famous.
So the idea there is by pointing toward another famous thing, then you just get to make another thing famous. And with Tabula Rasa, completely did not work. They put it together. It got a little bit of traction for like 2 weeks and then just completely imploded on itself. Right. And so I think, this is a lesson that you can look back over the years and see people trying to do this over and over again, is point to unrelated stuff and try to pretend like it's related. And then it just doesn't pan out.
But in this, if it's completely unrelated, it's just not going to work. But you can even see, like, take Pokemon, right? You can slap Pokemon on anything and sell the fuck out of it, but that thing still has to have Pokemon in it, right? If it's got Pokemon, you can make.
You don't say from the makers of Pokemon.
From the makers of Pokemon comes this first-person shooter murder simulator.
If you played as a Pokemon, that would be incredible. I would Pikachu the shit out of people.
Oh my god! If a first person,
if it was kind of like Alien versus Predator, but it's
my god,
Alien versus Pikachu.
Someone called Niantic, called that Pokemon game company.
Ridley Scott and the creators of Pokemon bring you Alien versus Pikachu. All right, so I guess lesson learned: if somebody doesn't do well, be wary of their explanation as to why that is the case.
Also, if they do well, be wary
generally
of their
speaking, be wary of people's explanations for things.
Recognize that they don't know why. You ought to be able to point to some reasons why things did not go well and why they did go well, even though those won't be the full explanation.
We talked about this a little bit with the Crashlands launch stuff. Where our goal was to say every box that we know exists, we have checked.
Right.
That doesn't mean we
tried to check every box.
Right.
Just the ones we knew
Just
about.
the ones we knew about.
Yeah.
But it's also
worked
bearing
well
in mind that we can, people always say, I did everything right and my game still failed, right? And usually what they mean by that is doing everything right is they contacted YouTubers, they, they made a trailer, they contacted press, they went through the marketing checklist.
But they may have not made a game that anybody wants.
Exactly. And that's kind of the kicker is every game has a certain level of appeal, and it all depends on the context of the market, when it's made, what else is out there, the timing. So for example, if you quote, did everything right, and then launched your game on iOS during that week that Super Mario Run came out, you didn't do everything right because nobody got to see your game, right? And so there's always something that you can find as to why it didn't go. So also we have a pretty weird news item, which is we're doing an experiment. We're doing a summer experiment.
Yeah.
Spearmint.
We've taken to call it the summer spearmint.
Yeah.
Which is our term for doing an experiment because
in the summer.
I think someone just mispronounced it. That we just rolled it. So the summer spearmint at Butterscotch HQ is as follows. We noticed that, so we work 5 days a week, right? 8 to 4 every day, usually 4:35 because people kind of trickle out. And we noticed that a lot of the first reasons that we put that 8 to 4 schedule in place no longer were holding up. And the primary reason to go from 8 to 4 instead of 9 to 5 was to say, one, it actually feels better to get off work earlier in the day.
You just got a little more evening. There's more sun.
It feels better. Even though you have to start work earlier, I think it's a thing that all of us have actually come to really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, we all should be waking up earlier anyway, no matter how much
we should all be up at like 2.
Easily. Yeah.
Yeah. So that part of the schedule still holds, but part of the motivation there was saying, a lot of the stuff that people have to deal with, if you work a 9 to 5, you actually have no time to go deal with during the week. For example, going to the bank closes at 5. Good luck. If you work a 9 to 5, get into the bank on the
Some
weekday.
of them close at 6 though.
Do they now?
Some of them. Some
5:30 to 6. Anyway, so the idea was to give this nice hour chunk at the end of the day where it's totally fine for everybody to bounce and go take care of some stuff. The reality, of course, is that all of us like doing our work, and so most of the time people leak until
we're kind of here till 5 anyway.
Yeah, 4:35, or want to go take care of something else, not necessarily run an errand right after work, like go to the gym as a crew, all this sort of stuff. So the purpose of that stopping at 4 was not really working in terms of letting people fulfill their other life needs and stuff.
Right. So we actually tried to stopgap first before the thing you're going to talk about.
We did. So the next thing we implemented was a thing we called Chaos Prevention Day. Mm-hmm. And this has to do with the idea of interruption coalescing. So you take all of the times in your day or in your life where normally you would sort of be drip fed these interruptions, like errands. The easiest example is emails. So one of the best ways to increase your productivity overall is just to do emails once or twice a day at a particular time instead of letting them drip feed. So you take all those interruptions and you coalesce them into a batch, essentially. So the idea with Chaos Prevention Day was that we said, all right, every third Friday,
every 3 weeks on
Friday, try to put all of those appointments, all of those, like I need to go to the license bureau to get my driver's license updated, bank account stuff,
the Bureau of Shipping to ship some stuff,
all these things that you normally have to do, but you can't seem to get done during the work week. You can have time on this third Friday every month from the studio to just go do these things. It's Chaos Prevention Day. So you try to like load up your appointments and stuff. The problem was that it seemed like it only vaguely worked. Essentially, it allowed people to get more stuff done, but it didn't actually stop the interruptions from hitting the whole rest of the week. In other words, people were just going to do their stuff on Fridays, but weren't able to sort of shuffle them out of the normal work weeks.
Yeah. It's infrequent enough, right? So every 3 weeks on Friday means it's a weirdly unpredictable time. And so if you go, I need to go to a doctor's appointment, you say to your doctor, hey, how about next Friday? Because I can go like during the day, and they say, ooh, that's not going to work. What about the following Friday? And then you go, how about 3 Fridays from that?
But on top of that, you actually need to plan your chaos prevention. You already need a chaos prevention day to make all of those plans. And with that, like long of an interval, that means you have to be like everything has to be on the radar all the time.
Right.
And so it just required too much thinking to be effective in any way.
So the next step was after we had our quarterly quarterly retreat, quarterly review a couple weeks ago. We said, okay, what's the actual deal with this? How can we possibly make this just a better overall life experience for everybody?
Well, wait. We also need to talk about jam days before we get into that.
Okay, yeah. So
this is all part of the
package.
backstory.
So as you guys know, we do jam days at least once every month. And a jam day is you come in at 8 and you go until somewhere between 8 and 10. And usually we'll have
So not 0 minutes, but like 12 hours.
12, 14 hours. And we found them to just be they're really fun and they're incredibly potent work days. And it at least feels like you get much more than what you'd consider basically a day and a half of work done. It usually feels something like about 2 days, if not more, in that one chunk of time.
It's because of the dedication of focus.
Mm-hmm. The dedication of focus. And I think also in terms of, there's a lot of things you do every single day that sort of stack up in terms of interruptions over the course of a work week. So for example, if you read games industry articles every day, like I do, then if that's like 20 minutes you take, then on a jam day, that's 20 minutes for 12 or 14 hours versus 20 minutes every 8 hours.
Yeah,
right?
you effectively didn't even take time to do it, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So
it's just free time.
Yeah, we found them super good, but people are usually a little bit, we come in late the day after, an hour and a half or two late, but still people are kind of like, that's a lot of work to do in one day. So you're kind of sapped.
Well, yeah, I mean, maintaining really rigorous focus just takes a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do it for that long of a stretch, when you come in the next day, even though you're really pumped now and jazzed because you just got so much done, you feel you're productive, your mind is just kind of scattered and keep it. And actually, which that brings us to the other point too, which is we noticed that just that 5 days, which like trying to keep people just completely focused and engaged and on all the time. Because as far as we're concerned, if you're not solely dedicated to your work and you're at work, then what's the point? What are you doing? Right. So that's what we expect here. And that's what people do is they just throw themselves 100% into the work. But when you maintain that, for 5 days in a row, and then, throw in a jam day on top of that every once in a while, and it just gets,
it's a lot.
Very, very
I think
taxing.
So there's a difference between intensity and duration, right?
Yeah.
Most workplaces measure your work output via duration. They say 40 hours a week, get it done. We want to balance essentially more so toward intensity.
Well, it's also because you can measure duration, but you can't measure intensity.
Yeah. So what we're going to do for Spearmint Summer is the coalescing of all of this stuff, all of this thinking is we're going to try a 4-day work week. And not in the sense of saying you work 40 hours still or 8 hours a day, but you actually work Monday through Wednesday, 8 to 4, standard stuff. And then on Thursday, every week, it's jam day.
Jam day.
Every Thursday.
Every single Thursday. So from 8 to 8, basically, everybody will come in, crush a bunch of stuff, and then Friday, whatever. Do whatever you want. And the hope is that we'll sort of hit a better balance point for everybody's lives, period, in terms of just being able to take care of stuff and not necessarily feeling stretched too thin.
Yeah, well, because in principle now, the total number of hours, if we're measuring that, becomes a little bit less for this 4-day thing.
It actually becomes less.
But each one of those hours is now far more valuable because all the things that normally allow people to kind of be interrupted during the workday, planning their chaos prevention, having chaos, all those things, as well as just kind of taking care of your life stuff and worrying about your life stuff. Now there's just a day every week where you get to handle all of that. And so the amount of bleed through into the work week itself, those days where you're supposed to be solely focused on the task at hand, you just have fewer and fewer and fewer reasons, especially over time, for that stuff to be a problem and to interrupt you.
Right. So we're gonna give this a go, and we of course did a bunch of research before we decided to give this thing a try. We're doing it for a month, starting in I think the second week of July. But we're gonna be sort of doing a postmortem after the fact, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the podcast as far as how it's going.
Probably a mid-mortem.
Yeah, that's how we do. So, but we're really excited to see what this does and see if the effects on the work are as good as the effects that we're pretty sure are going to get on the people. Because I think it's definitely true that everyone's very much looking forward to having 3-day weekends every single weekend.
Yeah.
The question is it going to be the case that the work also increases in terms of, quality and output?
Because in the end, still got to make stuff so that we can pay everybody and keep this thing afloat. Mm-hmm. So who knows? I think it's going to work though. I feel good about it.
I think so. All right. So that's going to start on July 10th?
Something like that.
The week of July 10th. We'll have some updates.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get on to some questions. And these questions come from podcast.bscotch.net, and they're asked by our Bscotch ID members. with a couple of anonymous internet randos kind of thrown into the mix, you know. All right, so first question comes from Cathal. Is it too early to ask what the system requirements will be for the next Butterscotch game? Will my low mid-tier PC work, or will I have to splash out on a new rig?
It is very rare, or very unlikely, I guess is a better word, that we will make a game in the near future that even has technical requirements.
We're forced to put them there.
You should be able to play it on a wooden chessboard.
Yeah, and a lot of it is like our goal is to make games that are as broadly available as possible, and we are absolutely not trying to compete with the studios who are competing amongst the really great art and really great graphics and really great pushing all the physics engines. Like we're not trying to compete in that space. We're trying to make just really fun, solid gameplay experiences with. And that's it. That we're trying to compete in our own little weird space.
Well, it's been an interesting journey too, because I think we, as we've gotten better at the game design, at the programming, at the art, there's always a want to do more.
Yeah,
always a want to do more, and especially
we
on the
always
art
think
side.
maybe 3D.
Yeah,
would be kind of cool.
Yeah, we always think about it. But one of the other interesting things is that when we look at the 2D game space, we look at a game like Hollow Knight, which for those of you who haven't seen it, super beautiful Metroidvania that recently came out, did really well. Adam played it this past week. How many gigs was it? It's 2D.
It was 8 gigs.
8 gigs. Okay. Crashlands is 50 megabytes.
60
well,
now.
60 now.
Yeah.
And that's mainly music.
That's because music's in stereo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're looking at that. And the thing is, so this is always an argument essentially between the technical side and the art side, because artists always want to put more stuff in there.
I've learned that art is a gas, and it will always maximize to fill whatever space you give it.
Yeah. So
you got to constantly be bottling it up.
So the thing that we've had to be getting more and more clever about is essentially saying, how do we achieve an even better looking game every single time we make one that is ideally, steps and bounds genuinely above the stuff we've made before that can compete visually on the market, but that doesn't absorb texture space so much, and a lot of it comes down to, a lot of people ask about the bone rigging system that Seth built within GameMaker for handling animations. And a big reason for doing that is so that we don't have to store texture-based keyframes for animations. Meaning if I had to redraw, say like a Wampet doing its full leg attack animation, as opposed to busting it up into a bunch of different pieces, that would take up a lot more texture space than being able to just change like the foot and have that be one little thing as opposed to being like a whole big image. So we save a ton of texture space by approaching things that way. And it happens to give our games a particular look and feel, which is sort of it's the outcome of it, or the benefit sometimes. But there's always a push and pull between these two things. But it's safe to say for the future that because our goal is to make really broadly accessible games, that we're not going to be making anything that will probably ever tax your device.
Yeah. And we mean broadly accessible just in that if you want the game, you can probably play it.
Unless you only have a Linux machine and a Windows phone.
Yeah.
In which case, we cannot help you. We just can't.
Yeah.
Although I'm still want to do the Linux experiment, but we're not.
Experiment.
The Lin
The experiment meaning putting one of our games onto Linux.
Yeah. Just because Andy and I now are both running Ubuntu, 24/7 blazing it over there.
Yeah. 24/7 blaze Linux.
That's right. And so if we can just get a build and just fiddle with it a bit, then, and I made a build once and it seemed to work, but that was also on a laptop that was, I think, a decade old with an inbuilt graphics card that was also a decade old, and it played like it worked, but it was like a stuttering frame rate and stuff.
It's like way below iPhone specs.
Yeah, exactly. Which is already pretty low, right?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out, is it the build or
we could
shitty hardware?
We could try this experiment just to answer the question of whether or not we should provide a build for it for the next game on launch, right?
We'll see.
Who knows? Because I think that is the one place where because it's on Steam. Yeah, I think the market is actually big enough there that for the accessibility goal, there might be reason to put it there, but still there is no reason to put it on Windows Phone.
That's a fact.
Linux is above a Windows phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. Next question comes from Killer Percole, who says, that's how it starts. I just wanted, I forgot to ask you guys about your thoughts on net neutrality. Also, I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. I just wanted you guys to say that, LOL.
Net neutrality. What is it?
Who is it? Where did it go?
Where to go? Who's it from? What?
I feel like everybody in the world has the same thought about net neutrality, except for internet service providers.
Yes.
Which is not strange.
Which is that it's good. And people don't like the idea of having their connection throttled and then like paying money to get faster connections specifically for certain websites or whatever. Yeah. So the idea is, if I'm understanding correctly, it's that right now you have the same speed of connection to everything on
Netflix,
on the interweb,
YouTube, your mom's blog.
Right. So without net neutrality, your internet service provider could say, oh, we've launched a new video streaming service. And now just by chance, every other video streaming service is very, very slow.
It's weird.
Not only by chance, they can just outright say,
we did it.
We did it.
We did that because
ours is really fast. Theirs is really slow.
We did that because there are internet tubes and we can do what the fuck we want with them.
Yep.
Right. And because most, especially in the United States, most internet customers have literally no choice about who they get their internet from. This would mean that entire companies like Netflix or whatever could be just utterly crushed by ISPs with these sort of anti-competitive moves.
Netflix did come out to say that they make so much money now that they don't care, I believe.
Because they could just pay for it.
Yeah, they'll be like, yeah, we'll pay for it. I don't care.
Yeah, because...
Yeah.
Although, but
they'll pay to go fast.
the ISP could just literally just be like, no, you can't access.
Right, they could.
Right. It's not even just a matter of throttling. It's just saying they get to decide what you get, what they'll carry on their tube.
Comcast Flicks.
Yeah. Which we all know would be a great user.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have yet to meet a single human, just
a real human, not a lizard man who works for the cable company.
Or a politician because
because they work for the cable companies.
Are politicians even people? That's a question for another day.
They're more like money laundering vehicles.
It's a financial instrument. That's
right. Politicians they're kind of like stocks and bonds.
Yeah, You just buy one.
You buy them and then you just get interest for a while and then your tax rate goes down.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a good financial instrument if you can afford it. It's a top earner sort of thing.
Yeah. It's top tier.
High buy-in.
Top tier. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty. To me, it's pretty uncontroversial.
In terms of it being completely,
in terms of everybody in the universe who uses this service being in agreement on it.
Yeah.
And then the people who provide it, politicians and cable companies who are the same thing, wanting to get rid of it.
Right. So, because they don't make enough money, Seth.
They need to. The thing is, they need to have more of the money. They just
more money.
They don't have enough donuts. They got to get way more donuts. All right, next question comes from Angry Muffin. How do you feel about Apple's family sharing, where one person can buy a game and up to 5 other people can play it too without buying it again?
This is only an interesting problem because of the digital nature of things, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you think about back in the day when you bought whatever damn video game you wanted on a disc.
That's just how it worked.
You're like,
and you have a Game Boy, and your brother has a Game Boy, and then your sister has a Game Boy.
You rip the physical cartridge out and you give it to them, and Nintendo doesn't come by and they're like, hey, you gotta give me $5. And you remember there was a patent that someone found that Microsoft was putting together for the Kinect.
Yep.
That was the Kinect would watch your living room, and if you're watching a movie, it's like cool, you paid your $5. If someone else joined you,
someone else walked into the room,
they patented the technology where they could essentially like charge you.
Although here's interesting.
Well, no, it would freeze the movie, and then it would require you to pay more to increase the number of viewers.
But what's interesting about this, just that specific example, is that it is technically true that if you buy a movie, right, you're the person who's allowed to view that, and if you show it to other people, that is now
that's piracy.
It is actually piracy because that is now a what's the word for it? It's a exhibiting.
Well, you're breaking the license.
You're breaking the license agreement exactly
because you don't own the movie.
Here's what
you're buying the right for you to view it.
What if I go see Wonder Woman and then I go talk to my friends about it and I tell them the entire story and plot?
It depends how vividly you depict it.
What if I'm I'm just a wordsmith, so I'm making them hallucinate the movie in their brain,
right,
with my words.
Yeah, you're breaking that user agreement.
You know what I'm saying?
I think this might be a trade secrets infringement.
What if I play the Breath of the Wild Zelda game, and my significant other comes and watches me play it?
Well, now it's a let's play, which means again you are now liable for damages.
But you're also going to have to start advertising to your fiance or your spouse.
Oh, yeah, I'll pause the game and be like, "Have you heard about
Bleach?" And then they have to wire money over to YouTube Red.
Wait, isn't this just what a let's play is?
Or they'll just wait 5 seconds and then poke me and then I'll get back to playing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think
As long as you are sort of emulating what the market is.
I think the weird thing is that it's so non-controversial when the good is physical, because it doesn't make any damn sense.
Because, well, it's the only way it can be.
It's the only way it could be. So
for playing a game, though, not like for watching a movie, that's controversial as fuck. That you'd be like, now everybody has to chip in. And that part, right? But when it's a physical good, though, just practically, if two people in the same house want to play it, they both have to own a device as well as a copy of the game to do it. Mm-hmm. And so back in the, and this is how like the whole world was designed, right? It was designed around just that fact of existence, that if you wanted to use some entertainment product, you had to get it as a physical entity. And if it was something you interact with, only one person can interact with at a time. So that's just how it had to be. But now we're in the digital age where literally none of that is true anymore. And we're still, everybody sort of believes that the practices should be the same as they were back when everything was a physical good.
But it's also the case now that many, or I should say most, digital goods are free.
Yeah.
And so this really only applies to digital goods that you bought.
Right.
So this only affects paid games, because if it's a free game, it's like, sure, everybody just downloads it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But I think that's the interesting thing is that I guess there's that question of what's the should here, you know, what's the feeling of how this should operate, because
fine to me.
I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
If someone's like, oh yeah, I bought Crashlands for my family, I'm like, cool.
Great.
You don't need to spend $25 buying this game on mobile as opposed to $5. It just doesn't make any sense.
And everybody can sign up for a unique Butterscotch ID.
Logic, though.
All right, let's go.
If I can buy it from my family, why can't I just buy one copy and share it with everybody?
You could. It's like a library.
That's what people do.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. but would we consider that to be okay? That I can just buy it and just like now, literally every other human can just play my copy instead of buying their own copy from.
But as we've discussed,
as a distributor, because you ain't family.
But I was already distributed.
Now there's got to be some sort of blood or legal tie involved. Otherwise, I'm gonna be.
But here's the thing,
sort of a family and friends discount.
Well, here's the thing, but it's also in friends, right? Because
true.
Without a doubt, anybody who's like, oh yeah, this is cool, they're gonna share it with their buddy too. You know,
you'd be like, you're my uncle. No.
Yeah. But as Facebook taught us, you know, friend is a slippery word that can mean literally anybody.
What's the maximum number of people you can have in one of these things? There's got to be a maximum.
Well, I think it's no. I think what you're doing is, because we talked about piracy a lot in previous episodes, and basically how it doesn't matter, because as long as enough people still just buy it.
No, but that's not why it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because those people wouldn't have bought it anyway, so it's not a lost sale, right?
So, but
they're not part of your market.
But the assumption now is that if let's say I have a friend who buys games, and I'm like, well, I don't buy games because I got this friend who buys games, right? So I'm just gonna always wait for them to buy the game and then give me the disc later or whatever. So I'm not a lost sale because I never buy games, right?
So that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So which is why this is all coming to my position on this, which is that if you want like your whole family to be playing this game, everybody should buy a fucking copy of the game and play it, right? Or you should buy a copy for everybody. If you're trying to convince somebody to play because they wouldn't otherwise, and you want to reduce the barrier because like, oh, you're going to love the shit out of this game, or it's a game that you know you're going to play a lot of, and you want them to have like to join with you sometimes or whatever, right? Then, you know, just buy your own copy and then share it with them, right?
So you're saying you don't think the family sharing thing makes?
I mean, I think,
well, except the family sharing has a maximum of 5.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, as soon as you do like family sharing, maximum of 5, this all becomes arbitrary and takes intent away, which is the same deal with piracy, right? Because to me, piracy is all about what is it actually doing? Because the only reason for us to even give a shit at all is just if these mechanisms mean that now we get less of an opportunity to make more games for those same people who want games from us, right? Which just means if as soon as people don't buy the games but would have, that means we get to make fewer games.
The future is imperiled.
The future is imperiled, right? And so for me, like as soon as you just say, here's a mechanism by which it's just expected actually now, right? It's now just expected that you can now have 5 people who let's just say all of them want the game and can afford it, right? But now the mechanism is just it's a family thing.
Just one of them buys it.
It's now expected actually that you only one person buys it, and that's the end of the story. And like once you start, it's sort of like the whole free to play practice, right? Like once it exists and becomes an expectation, then that's just how things are now, right? And
what if the platforms start competing on how big the family size is?
They could.
Like, oh yeah, we offer 7.
We could just increase our prices by 5 times.
Exactly. Like,
boom.
Yeah. Right. And that helps. That would on bring average 4 families of 5, but then kicks out everybody else, right? So so to me, like I just in most ways I don't give a shit or think that it matters, right? But I think that it sets up actually just nonsensical precedent, right? Because it makes just as little sense for me to be like, oh, I bought this game, now my family members can also have it, as it does to say, I bought this game, my friend can have it, or this random stranger that I met. Like, there's no reason that being a family
It's different.
means that I share things that I bought, unless we're like sharing devices and like it's
Unless
kids
you're talking about kids, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is also
But it's not how people use it. People are using like it's adult fucking college kids sharing it with their siblings, right?
What if they have?
But this is also the scenario now where you've got a family of 5 where they have enough money that everybody has an iPad or something.
Right.
But they don't have enough money to buy like 5 copies of a couple $1
Right.
game, which probably makes sense because they spent all their money on it.
Yeah. The thing is, like, to me, it's like if you have separate devices, you should buy separate copies of it. Is my opinion, I guess, on this. Is if you have your own device, you should own also your own copy of the game.
What about something like a Netflix subscription?
Netflix recognizes this is a thing, and they just give you different user accounts.
So
But here's the difference, though, is on something like Netflix, right? This is now something that you just watch, right? And you mostly, it's like it's not an interactive component, which means that, you know, it's not unlike a game where one person interacts with it at a time, unless it's a multiplayer game. And I would actually say, like, if it's a multiplayer game, you always play it with somebody else. Like, why the fuck would you both have a copy? That doesn't make any sense, right?
Right. True.
And it's like, to me, a TV show is just a multiplayer video game.
Whoa.
You know,
Local
co-op,
Local co-op.
but it's a walking simulator.
It's very
right? You don't
passive.
actually do anything.
It is a game.
It's an automated walking simulator, right? And so
I'm going to start calling movies automated walking simulators.
I see that Wonder Woman automated walking simulator. Oh, man.
Super good.
But they are though, right? Because
The gameplay was okay.
right. And so for me, like a family plan totally makes sense as a thing to do with something like Netflix, assuming you're watching stuff with your family. Because I also know, and I think I probably did this actually at one point in college or something back when I had no scruples or morals, right? Where there would be somebody else, like maybe related to me, like a parent or something. And again, I can't remember if this actually happened, but I know other people who do it, where they live in different fucking states. They're not watching TV together, right? And they're just like, ooh, it would be cheaper.
Can you just send me your Netflix password?
Yeah, exactly. Send me a Netflix password. And so people are sharing it with people that they barely even know. And to me, this now goes like counter to the whole point, which is that for these entities to exist to provide us the stuff that we want, people have to pay for it. If you can afford to pay for it, you should.
You should.
And when it comes to things like this question of what a license is and like who can I share it with and what are my rights, just like who gives a shit? If you like a thing, support it and pay for it if you can.
Yeah,
right?
but that's not the modality. I think that
No, it is not. But I think the thing is like things like a family sharing plan actually push against the healthier modality.
Well, we've talked about a little bit about in the past about the difference between a platform and a developer, or even in this case, something like Netflix and maybe the people who make the movies.
Yeah.
And how a thing that necessarily might be good for the platform might actually not be good at all for any individual who makes content for that thing.
Right.
And I guess you mean by your logic, I think it could be certainly argued that actually a family sharing plan, very good for the platform. Looks great.
Especially if it's a feature that no other platform has or something like that.
Right. But in terms of its actual effect on the devs, individual dev studios might be less good.
But I think actually the individual effect on people is probably not very big. Like I think the relative impact of like sharing within a family versus everybody buying within the family, that's going to happen so rarely anyway.
Right.
That I don't think about it. Well, I mean, one difference is that like between my wife and I, for example, because we play a lot of the same stuff. We actually set up the family thing on because Google Play has it too, right? Mm-hmm. And so we actually set that thing up so we could like try, and we use it to kind of try other games that we, alternately had that we're not really into just to like see what they were. And we actually did the same thing with Steam because Steam you can also share in a family, right? But for both of us, anytime we actually decide we like a game that we've tried, the other person's copy of, we just go buy it ourselves. Mm-hmm. And part of it is like on Steam, you actually can't play the game at the same time.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's and to me, like that's something cool that kind of recognizes the reality of the thing, which is that, it sort of recognizes the intent. And so the thing that I worry more about is not about just like kind of the loss of sales, because I think that's minor. I don't think it's a big deal.
Sure.
But it's the way that sets up people's understanding of what they're doing when they buy a game, right? Because buying a game right now is treated by most people as a thing. Oh, I have to do this to be able to access this content, right? Instead of, oh, I'm gaining access to this thing and then providing the ability for the creator of that thing to make more, right? Because that's what actually the relationship is. And if you just see it as how do I get this thing as cheaply as possible? Because that's what a family plan does. It's the same as the race to the bottom of any pricing system. Is it just says how do we get this as cheaply as possible? Which to me is just a bad framing, especially for the long term, because now the kids that grow up in these environments that are just like sharing all this content that they literally never pay for, right? Now they go out in the world. What are they going to buy? And if they buy stuff, aren't they going to just put their friends on their family plan?
I will say, though, I think, it can go either way in the sense that, we grew up in the Napster age.
Yeah.
And so.
But the big difference, though, is that sometimes you would download a virus.
Yeah.
So it's like a roll of the dice. There was risk. There's actual risk.
We're
involved.
still in the Napster age. Now we just call that, what is it? Sound, whatever the fuck. Sound
Cloud?
No, not Sound. Spotify, I bet. Spotify is just Napster. It's fucking free music.
Yeah.
It's not different. It is not different except that sometimes the people who are, putting content there get paid a tiny, tiny fraction of money.
Like
based on advertising revenue.
100th of a penny per
listen or something.
Because the reason that we were all stealing music back in the day was because there was literally no other way to get it besides buying it on a disc for $1 a track. Right?
Except in a lot of cases, there was not a good way to get that either.
Yeah.
Because we lived in the Midwest at the time, so those people. And there was a Radio Shack.
The Walmart was the one that had.
There was a Walmart and a Radio Shack, and if they didn't have it, you just don't get to listen.
Yeah, but also that's $10 a pop, right? And as we talked about in the last episode ish, we had allowance money. We had to use that for stuff. We wanted to buy video games with that shit. We didn't want to buy, the
latest Backstreet Boys album.
Right. But the thing is now with something like Spotify, you have access to literally the entire archive of all music and for free, or for so cheap, it's effectively free. Because if you're paying whatever it is, $10 a month or less than that.
I think it's 10.
To get to listen to music of literally every kind of music that has ever existed, right? You just get to listen to that. You're basically getting that for free. To me, there's no difference between your treatment of that as it was like back when you were using Napster, right? You're just getting free content. The relationship between
you won't get as many viruses.
Yeah, but
so it's a little different.
Right. But think about your relationship to music now after using things like Spotify. And I used to use Pandora back when that was the main one. To me now, music is a thing that has little value.
Right. Well, you don't have to work for any given track.
Well, this is actually why
I've been trained to think like I just like skip through music, whatever. I don't even try stuff. It doesn't matter. If somebody told me I had to pay $1 to listen to a piece of music now, I'd be like, what in the fuck? Right.
How dare you?
I'm
going to be broke in a day.
I could get a tulip cookie from Panera for that price.
And it's because I've been trained, by these systems. That's the way it is. And as we've complained about in the past, this is what free to play has done to video games. It's made them not have value.
Is this not, for whatever reason, is this not sort of the end all be all for just content?
Oh, I think it is. I think
there's a lot of
I think advertising is going to be the thing that supports literally everything. Everything is just going to be effectively free for the consumer, and what's actually happening is the transaction is not a consumer buying something from us. It's going to be them selling their attention to some entity in return for getting access to the thing that we made.
I will say, I think
gross.
Yeah,
maybe. I think things happen generationally, and different generations have different sort of interpretations or different approaches to things as they grow up surrounded by different technology and stuff. What we might see in the longer term is a sort of a cyclical return to people not wanting to constantly be worried about being surveilled by having robots in their houses and shit like that. Maybe.
I mean, maybe.
So I know one thing that I've done, that my wife and I have done, is we've canceled our Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
And because we felt the same way, we're basically watching movies or watching TV shows just became a mindless habit that you don't do on purpose. And it also is not satisfying in any way because you just have infinite of it.
And it's an opportunity cost because there's stuff that is a much better use of your time that you're now definitely not doing.
Yeah. And so what we did instead is we canceled our Netflix subscription. And then when we want to watch a movie, we rent it for like $3 on Amazon.
Yep.
And then we just watch that, which means, we're renting, 3 or 4 movies a month, maybe, which basically comes out to the same as a Netflix subscription. The difference is now we actually make an event out of it instead of like
plopping down.
Yeah. Instead of somebody just like coming home after work and then just like plopping on the bed and just like watching, 8 episodes of Breaking Bad or something just by themselves. Now it's, read a book or, work on something, whatever. And then if we want to watch a movie, we do it together. And it actually means something. Like we have popcorn, and like we make an event out of it, because it's just not infinitely available all the time. So, there is a lot of value to that. So
yeah, but on that very same service on Amazon, they're trying to pack as much free with Prime content in as they can.
Yeah.
because their goal is to make it so that you someday you're like, ooh, but I want to see this show and it is free. And now you can just veg out and watch it again. Right.
Yeah.
And well, I think
it's hard. It's going to be harder and harder to escape.
It is. And I love the idea that like that maybe or the next or the younger generation will be better. I don't believe that even for a second, because they're more steeped in it than anybody has been in the past. Because it's just getting more intense, right? Yeah. It's becoming more normalized. And so, yeah, there always will be a backlash against it. There always has been. There's always been a subset of the population that kind of pushed against stuff, and people like you who just cut one cord or another and escape it. There will always be those people, but that doesn't mean that that's a trend that like the whole thing is going to shift.
Okay, listen, I want to present an idea to our listeners, and I want to get some feedback on this.
Okay,
because this is something that we've been talking internally about doing. And I know I haven't talked to you guys about revealing this to the public, but we're doing it. So we have all of our older games are free to play. They have in-app purchases in them. They have ads in them. We've never liked this. We've never liked this fact. It adds a lot of maintenance on our end because we have to make sure that we keep our SDKs up to date for ads as well as in-app purchases. And the fact that we have 4 games split apart means that let's say a new iOS update comes out. Now we have to patch 4 games. New Google Play update or new Android version comes out. We got to patch 4 games. And if there's a compatibility problem in one of them, there's probably a compatibility problem in all of them, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of work. And on top of that, it's not even the type of game experience that we want to be delivering because we don't want to be showing ads to people. We don't want to have the sort of like in-game stores and all that garbage. But we felt like at the time we kind of needed to do it to get enough people just looking at us because like Adam's talking about sort of the forces of the market dictate that you don't pay for stuff. Yep. Right. And so now that we've sort of established that we make good enough stuff to warrant paying a couple of dollars for, we're in a different position. So one thing that we are considering doing is taking our 4 older games, rolling them together into a single application that we'll call the Butterscotch Arcade or something like that. Ripping out all the ads, ripping out all the in-app purchase elements, rebalancing them to be more appropriate for, not having all those purchases. So Quadrupus Rampage in particular is pretty,
it's the best of the bunch, but is also the most skewed by all the
so like stuff. because you can buy things to progress your character in the game, then there's all these things in the game that are balanced around that fact. So we would kind of rebalance that, rip out the in-game store, find better ways to do stuff. So we'd roll all 4 of those games together into a single app, and then we would sell that for a few bucks as just like the Butterscotch Arcade. It's something that we are debating doing, not in the near term, but in, a little bit later down the road. So I'm just curious to hear from our people. You can just like send us a tweet or just, throw a podcast question up and just say that you like the idea or that you hate the idea.
Do we read Twitter at all?
No.
I check out.
Okay. I check it, I think, once every 2 weeks.
I jumped on there yesterday and I was like, what is this? Then I left.
So probably on average, we probably check it with decent frequency.
I think this is so weird because we make games. We are a technology studio, but all of
us like Luddites
completely hate most aspects of it.
Well, but there are certain things because we all still love games though, right?
Yeah.
And we still love making technology, and the technology that we make, I would argue, does the best that it can to practice the principles that we preach. So take Butterscotch ID, right? Yeah, we could, and take Butterscotch ID 2 in particular. We're going to let people use Facebook and Twitter and Google to log into it. And what that means is we could, because those companies are very happy just to give us all of your information. Right?
They will do it.
They try to.
If you're on Facebook and you ever sign into something with Facebook Connect or whatever, really what you're doing is you're just telling that other company, like, oh yeah, you just have everything.
Yeah,
like everything I've ever done.
Right.
My mother's maiden name, my first pet's name, all that stuff. You can just have that.
The street where I grew up, all of it's there. Yep. So, and I mean, and realize like, that stuff based on the privacy settings you choose, that there's a certain subset that goes, et cetera. But I was actually amazed when I was hooking up to these services for Butterscotch ID, just how much shit they threw at us. Right. And,
we don't want it,
but we don't want it. We don't want any of your fucking data, right? Cause we don't want to have to protect
your name.
It. We don't want
your name.
I want your email address.
We just want your email address so that we can contact you. And so that you can say, well, you can reach out to us for support. And we can be like, yeah, we believe you are who you say you are because you have that email address and that's the one that's attached to your account. Right. And so when we're doing our technology stuff, we try to practice the stuff that we don't have, alerts on our applications, right? So we don't spam you with things.
We don't
take
send
your
push
attention.
notifications.
We don't send push notifications. We don't spam you with emails all the time. We just send you a newsletter that's entertaining, right? So I don't think there actually is a discrepancy. I think what we're trying to do is kind of the thing that we wish everybody else was doing, because I personally fucking love technology. I think it's awesome. Like I love the tech behind something like Facebook and Twitter. I just loathe the companies themselves that are making that tech and what they're doing with it.
Because they realize that by sort of preying on very particular aspects of human psychology or emotion, then they can do stuff.
Yeah, because I
get away with it.
To me, what those companies are doing is a net negative for literally all of society, because their reach is so large, and they do provide some things that can be positive, like ways for people to contact each other in important situations, ways for people to stay connected, that sort of thing. But though they do that at the baseline, that's not the goal of those companies, right?
The goal is to sell
The goal is to sell advertising, and that means that they have to manipulate all kinds of things about you to do that. And I don't want any part of that.
We don't want to do that.
But I love the tech. Like I love learning about how it works. Right. And I love interacting with it until it gets gross, and then I have to turn it off and get away from it. Right. But I think there still are enough companies doing non-gross stuff.
What do you think the cost of principles are?
It's really expensive to have principles.
Yeah, from an opportunity cost standpoint, right?
Yeah. Well, this
is interesting to me. That
really expensive.
but I mean, there's no
the cost of principles.
There's actually no reward aside from whatever your sort of self-satisfaction is.
There's no financial reward.
There's no financial reward. What I'm saying is like nobody cares that we do this. That's what I'm saying. Like I think
we have
podcast
wrong.
people.
I think people do care.
A lot less of them than would care if the game was like free.
Most people don't understand even what's happening. I think
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's taking a principled stand against something that most people don't even think about or care about.
Yeah, but it is for those people who do care, and for ourselves because we care and we know what we're doing, right? And yeah, I mean, I think it's the right way, but it is true because we talked about this internally in the past too. Like, we're escaping free to play. We hate it. And if we wanted to do it, we can make a free to play game that practices all the grossest psychological principles and just pulls money out of people.
Sam's a psych major. Yeah. I'm an econ major.
I'm a statistician.
Adam is a statistician. Like we have the exact background
to
do this. We can get real gross,
Well, I was actually thinking about this,
but we won't.
And then sit on a pile of money that that is bigger than anybody needs. But
that's dirty money.
That's gross.
Yeah, I'm not into it. But I think I was driving around yesterday and I realized I had this one thought which popped in my mind about free to play stuff, which is that our goal as a studio is to create as much value for our players as possible.
Right. And free to play is to extract
as much value as possible. Right. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And I think
it's fucking gross.
On a principled stance, I'm sure we're not going to have as much money as Supercell ever will. But I don't give a fuck.
Well, listen, I know we're basically out of time, but I just do want to touch on this, which is during our retreat, we talked about the idea that what we are doing inside of our studio is like we have this bubble of influence. And it's kind of like a lab. It's a laboratory where we can do experiments. We talked about Spearmint Summer. We're doing this the premium stuff. And we're just like, no, we're not going to fuck around with all the normal industry methods. We're going to allow you to maybe use Facebook Connect or Facebook Sign In to log into Butterscotch ID in the future.
But only to get your email address.
But we're literally not going to take any of your data. We just you're just going to use it to sign in. And that's the end of it.
It's just for convenience.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's all these other companies that do these things, and we just aren't going to do them because we believe that there's another way, right? And so we have this bubble of influence that we have control over. And then beyond that, we call it the fuzzy bubble, which is once we do stuff and learn about it and demonstrate that it works, then we can start spreading the word about that, and we can talk to other studios because we realize that our biggest mission as a studio doesn't really have anything to do with games specifically. Our goal as a studio is to do whatever we can to create the kind of world that we really want to live in. And I think...
and the world that we do live in is definitely not that way.
It's not there yet.
Nah.
It's got some things.
Got some kinks.
So the idea is... we have influence over a certain domain, which is our own sort of it's our own little bubble. Yep. We can do whatever we want in there, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And when it does, then we can go out and we can be an example. And we can also teach people about alternative approaches, alternative ways of doing things. So I think, maybe in the short term, the cost of having principals is astronomical. But maybe in the long term,
the opportunity cost.
Yeah, it's opportunity cost.
The opportunity cost, yeah. But maybe in the long term, what we're able to do is rally more people to get on board with the ideas that we're putting out.
And maybe by practicing our principles, we get to make the world a better place.
Shit, yeah.
Which I think is what principles are for.
That is what it's for, yeah.
Yeah, is you just say, fuck it, I'm going to sacrifice something in hopes that this is
Worth it.
This is a net gain for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good place to end.
What a great note to end on, you guys. I feel so uplifted and inspired.
Let's get out of here before it goes down.
All right. So we'd like to thank our studio wrangler, Monique, for putting this episode together. And again, congrats on making an entire human. That's a big effort.
Mm-hmm.
We'd also like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good, and the Butterscotch dev team, Andy, Tifa, and Sher, for continuing to build stuff while we're in here making this podcast. We'd like to thank our community moderators who keep our Discord and forums running. And of course, we'd like to thank you, our listeners, for coming back every week to listen to us talk about game dev stuff. Also, if you would like to get involved in the Butterscotch community, hop into our Discord server at bit.ly/bsdiscord and say hello, or come over to podcast.bscotch.net and ask us some questions. Also, we don't advertise this show. We depend completely on word of mouth and good reviews. So if you want to help us grow, spread the word, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your grandma, then go to iTunes, Apple.
No, it's Apple Podcasts.
Go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google
Podcasts, Google Play,
Goog Radio,
Google
whatever
Play
it's
Music.
called. Give us some 5 stars. Every little bit helps. So thank y'all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.